Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us and welcome to Ad Age Remotely. I'm Janine Poggi, Senior Editor here at Ad Age, and today I'm joined live by Sarah Hofstetter, President of Profitero, an e-commerce analytics firm. Hi, Sarah.
Hey Janine, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Happy Monday.
Same to you. Thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure.
So before we get started, for those of you watching at home, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them on our social channels and we will try to get to them during this conversation. So the consumer shift to e-commerce certainly accelerated rapidly amid COVID-19 as lockdowns forced people to purchase everything from groceries to personal care products online. And Sarah, obviously this trend is not a new one during COVID, but what does the speed in which consumers turn to online shopping and the types of products they were buying, during lockdowns mean for brands moving into 2021?
I mean, what's amazing is that the shift in consumer behavior has jumped at least 5 years in terms of adoption, and new habits have been formed. And once we know that the habits are formed, there's no turning back. The convenience factor is so strong, and there still is a raging pandemic. So when we look at where things are going, I think consumers are hooked and sticking with it, from anything from toilet paper to TVs to ice cream, and the kinds of things that people used to not think about buying online, they're not buying without thinking about it.
What are some of those things that people pre-pandemic didn't really purchase online that now we're seeing an uptick in?
Milk. I mean, it literally runs the gamut. Perishables has been a really big thing. I mean, I was buying fish online, which was kind of crazy, and I don't mean like live fish. I mean like fish to eat. Um, but yeah, there's I think it's the idea of the lack of minimum. So like you need it, you order it immediately. So just the instant gratification component of it, certainly. Perishables, for sure. But even if you looked at the early weeks of the pandemic, people were going from like this pantry packing mode of, protecting your house and trying to stock up on, disinfectant wipes, which you're lucky if you can still find right now, to, figuring out what it's going to be like to live at home, migration to, buying better coffee makers, to fitness at home, things like that.
But now that restrictions have eased, in certain parts of the country and we're sort of settling into some sort of new normal, what have you seen in recent weeks in terms of e-commerce trends?
Well, there's like recent weeks and then there's last week. So recent weeks was a lot of movement on back to school. So just very different from your typical, crayons and protractors. So people were scrambling to figure out how to buy desks. People were scrambling to figure out, still, again, things like webcams are still a hot topic and hard to find. So those are the kinds of things that really have been moving. And a lot of people over the past few weeks have been trying to figure out how to make their backyard warmer
Mm.
for the impending cold. So you see a lot of movement on those outdoor heaters, a lot of movement on the outdoor lighting, things like that, even backyard furniture, which had started back in April and is now experiencing a resurgence.
Yeah, I was trying to get one of those like outside warmers, space warmers, which are not cheap and surprisingly like mostly sold out. So, I get it. Like people who want to still see family outside and friends to be able to do that, seems like a hot item. But what does this all mean for brands now? How do they have to, or how have they been thinking differently in terms of, marketing online? It's so different to shop for, a box of cereal or something like that online versus going to the supermarket and sort of skimming the aisles. What does that mean for how marketers are thinking about branding?
I think cereal's a really great example, actually, because it's something that you wouldn't have thought about buying online before, but now, people are certainly doing it, and they're doing it with a great degree of frequency. So it used to be that marketers would say, okay, well, I've got my consumer marketing and that's outside of the store, and I've got my shopper marketing and that's inside the store. Uh, That all those rules are just completely out the window, because, and there was the other part about measurement, which is that if you invested in consumer marketing online, you would never be able to measure the conversion. Now, granted, not all the conversion is happening online and not all advertising is direct response, but being able to take somebody from an ad that they see online and then give them the option to purchase it and you don't think it's weird, that's a really big deal. And so groups of departments at big companies that previously maybe weren't talking to each other are now talking to each other um, fastidiously because the need for e-commerce to be woven into the fabric of the company's behavior is a necessity for revenue, and it's a necessity as it relates to things like supply chain.
What do you think this means for talent moving forward? Do you think the types of people in these roles are changing? Obviously, I'm sure they have been for some time, but do you think moving forward, the types of roles marketers will be hiring for on the digital side in particular, like what that will look like?
This reminds me a ton about like a decade ago when everybody was trying to figure out what social media was and how to make it work. And people were like, I need a social media marketer with, 15 years experience. And you're like, social media hasn't even been around for 15 years. So what the hell are you talking about? So I think that we're seeing high demand for talent. And there's not a lot of people that bring depth of experience, but I do think that a lot of the experience is transferable and being able to both have the curiosity and basic understanding about some of the basics, I do think can help. If, we look at where the economy is going, it looks like it's going to be kind of scary. That being said, look at big companies and where they're hiring. They're hiring in ecom.
Do you think this could also impact like the packaging of certain, brands items? Like you would think that packaging reflects differently online than it does, in store. And then also there's the shipping element of actually like delivering these products to the home. Do you think we'll start seeing a shift in what packages look like?
I think we already have. I mean, a couple of years ago, P&G released this Tide box, which was different than the Tide tub. So on the shelf, anybody who's been to a big retailer, you see that like wall of Tide, like every imaginable way of Tide, and the real estate is overpowering, and it contributes to the iconicness of Tide. And so for that zero moment of truth, that's wonderful. Start shipping those damn things, and they're heavy and they don't stack. So a couple of years ago, Tide had come up with an e-com version, which is basically the same amount of product, but in a box so that it's stackable and that there's a limited breakage. But now let's go further and see what are some of these D2C companies doing to completely outthink. And so there's a big growing business, and I've tried it, and it's actually pretty good. Instead of making your uh, laundry detergent powder or liquid, what if it were just biodegradable sheets?
Yeah.
Like literally like pieces of paper that you throw into your
Right. So it's even
into your
product, that's
washing
even
machine.
product design. That's more than just packaging. That's even thinking about like new
Yes.
product design.
Yes. Yeah. So that's definitely product design, and there are a bunch of companies out there that are doing it. I've tested about 5 or 6 of them. They're pretty good and obviously pretty eco-friendly as well. Shipping costs, breakage, like all those different things that you would be thinking about, those would play terribly in brick and mortar because it would take up such little real estate. Whereas in e-com, that's a big win, especially if you can slip it through a mailing envelope. The other thing as it relates to, like you said, packaging itself, certainly. So you're seeing people move from like even I've seen Smucker's has moved like um, the Jiffy tub to more of a squeezable. There are people there are companies that have moved from glass to plastic. I'm not saying I'm pro plastic, but you certainly are creating a breakage factor, which is super important as well. So yeah, the second moment of truth, I guess, when the box ends up, at your front door, it's not that big of a grand reveal if the product doesn't look exactly like it might have looked initially, so long as it's functional. And I think that that's just a change in consumer expectations.
One of the big things I'm really hoping just on a personal level have they change this year is, I ordered like last year like a Barbie dream house for my daughter for Christmas. And there it was sitting in front of our, stoop, all opened, like no box covering it. And I'm like, oh, there goes Christmas. And I noticed that like that was something people were complaining about last year. And I wonder if more people, shop online this year, if that's something that they will do a better job at. But that's just, my own little personal complaint there.
Well, it's actually a pretty good question because the whole idea about packaging, that also includes things like frustration-free packaging. So some people want the cardboard to protect their gift. On the other hand, some people don't because they don't want to have to keep cutting down that
Yeah.
cardboard. So you probably can't please everybody all the time. I think I learned that earlier in my
I
career.
think that's pretty much what we've learned through all of this, right? I'm Janine Poggi, and I'm here with Profitero Sarah Hofstetter. Thank you to those who are watching at home. We have Joanne from Canada, Mohammed from Egypt. We have Akram from Bangladesh. We have Hiba from Lebanon. We have Jose from the Dominican Republic and Abi from India. Thank you all for tuning in. So last week was also Amazon Prime Day, and I would like to talk a little bit about, some of the trends that you maybe saw come out of that.
Yeah, it's been pretty wild. I mean, I think that, well, first things first, we're calling it Prime Day or Prime Days. So, A, 2 days.
Right.
B, most of the other big retailers, certainly in the US, created their own version. There was Target Deal Days, there was Walmart Big Save, Best Buy, Costco, and SMBs, lots of small businesses. My wine supplier down the block had some pretty good deals. So, the I think that at this point, Amazon is leading the pack on where it's been going. And everybody's trying to figure out how to capitalize on that. And, the consumer wins on that, which is great. At the same time, it's very interesting to see what the consumers are looking for. So, and not just in the US, I think being able to compare it to other markets, Prime Day was live in a number of countries, and just being able to see the different trends of what people buy there, let's say in the UK versus the US, I think is just kind of fascinating.
Any interesting takeaways? Any, big ticket items that people were looking for, or anything that you expect will be, a hot item this year?
Well, I think one of the things that, there's just so much common sense, but sometimes you have it after the fact. But in some cases, it's just like, no doubt. Of course, the Instapot's going to move. It's like Prime Day and Instapot are almost synonymous at this point. So there are certain things you're going to kind of expect are going to be available on Prime Day, possibly older versions of products that are, going to have a new version, which is why I think Apple's AirPods were a good deal. This is a really great example. So we looked at the big movers and shakers in different categories. So you can actually see that 6 of the 10 biggest movers and shakers in the US in category in home and kitchen are Roombas. And so you might say to yourself, are people just too lazy to clean? No, they're all these Corona pets. So there are all these people that have gotten pets and they're home and their pets are shedding and they're like, what the hell do I do about this? And actually, if you start looking at for the keywords that people are using specifically to find these products, it's how to get rid of pet hair. And Roomba is known really well for it. Plus, it's actually entertaining for pets. So the fact that this year vacuum cleaners were among the top and Instapot got 2 slots, not terribly surprising in retrospect.
Yeah, that is certainly fascinating. I don't know. We're also home a lot more too, and I feel like my floor constantly has crumbs on it, so I can definitely use one of those. Anything else that you noticed, from other segments or sectors?
Grocery was kind of interesting if you look at the US versus the UK, for example. So in the US, if you look, oh, thank you so much for pulling this up. So in the US, if you look at the top moving grocery and gourmet food, it's pretty functional. Like you see, there's bottled water, there's healthy snacks, there's coffee. I mean, like 1, 2, 3 things of K cups and like Perrier and water. Like, okay, very functional. Now, if you scroll down, look at how the UK is operating. 9 out of 10 of the movers and shakers in the UK in the same category, booze. And the 10th, a 4.5 kilogram bar of Toblerone. I don't know why the hell I'm in New York.
They clearly know how to shop better than us. That's what that shows.
Well, also we got to figure out how to get liquor to be sold on Amazon in the US. And so maybe it would look the same, but I think it's just really indicative of just, especially for marketers, kind of knowing the rules of what you can and cannot sell online also helps you figure out how to optimize things as well and where and how to capitalize.
So are there any early indicators of, how the holiday shopping season might shape up? Anything that you're noticing or particular trends that, we might see moving into holidays?
Yeah, I think there are a few. First of all, Walmart just announced that they are adding extra sale days. So November 4th, which is interestingly the day after Election Day, November 11th, which is Singles Day, um, which is typically celebrated in China, but definitely has spread beyond that. It's a really big thing. And they're starting Black Friday on Wednesday, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving on the 25th. So there are going to be almost, I don't know if they're tent poles or tadpoles, but my question is, and I don't know the answer, admittedly, is this going to be a harbinger of getting rid of FOMO? People were rushing to the Cyber 5 of, Thanksgiving through Cyber Monday. Um, are people not gonna feel that urge because they can kinda get their stuff earlier? But I also think it's a smart move by Walmart day after the election to, deal with retail therapy of whatever kind, depending on how you're feeling about, the results from the night before, which who the hell knows whether or not that's
Yeah,
actually a result.
they'll be shopping their feelings or maybe preparing for some sort of economic, issue or anything like that. But speaking of Black Friday, how do you expect retailers to sort of handle Black Friday? I don't know if we're going to see the same rush of people really hitting the stores, or even if they'll be able, to be able to all line up ahead of time and sort of try to get in, the night before and all that kind of stuff. What are you anticipating, for Black Friday shopping, Cyber Monday? Do those all kind of blur together at this point?
I think a lot of it is going to depend on where we are as it relates to the pandemic and frankly, the political situation. But particularly if things are as they are right now from a health perspective, then I think Thanksgiving gatherings are going to look a lot different, in which case people might have a little bit more time to be shopping on Thanksgiving versus waiting for the day after, or even shopping the day before, which used to be the busiest travel day of the year. It might be the busiest travel day of this year, but you can't fall off the floor. So
So it'll really come down to where we are, and there are probably parts of the country as well. I would imagine in certain parts of the country, you'll see, I'm sure, different things than you'll see in others.
unemployment also plays a role in the situation because a month from now, unemployment could look different, and that'll affect how people choose to spend and how they choose to gift, which is why I think it's actually kind of a smart idea that Walmart's doing this event on the 4th.
Any other things from the holiday season we should be paying attention to or keep an eye out for?
Well, I think a lot of it is about what brings you joy this year. So if you can get your hands on Clorox wipes, God bless you. I think that would make a lot of people happy for the holidays. That's what were we saying? That's like this year's Tickle Me Elmo.
Yeah,
People
people are lining up for Clorox wipes and all of that versus the hot new toy this year.
certainly, but as has been in prior years, PlayStation 5's coming out, new Xbox. So those who are willing to go back to the 4 or something like that are going to find some great deals. But as we have seen throughout this pandemic, the big winner or loser right now is going to be about supply chain and fulfillment. It's going to be about whether or not you can actually support consumers' needs. There's plenty of stuff to be sold. I mean, Amazon, they call it the everything store for a reason, but does that mean that they have everything that you want when you want it to be delivered when you want it? And reliability for retailers is going to be the name of the game. I ordered something last week to be shipped day of, and they didn't tell me that the products were out of stock, and I was planning on making it for dinner. And 4 out of the 5 ingredients that I ordered did not come. And I was playing a good episode Chopped, which was fine, but not necessarily what intended. So retailer reliability is going to be a biggie.
Yeah, I've actually noticed over the last like maybe week or two, Amazon Fresh, which is what I've been using throughout the entire pandemic, the days to pick for delivery have actually gone further out. Like I used to be able to get one pretty quickly recently, but that's changed. Do you think we're seeing a shift back in the supply chain? Will there be, backup or issues moving forward?
Well, there's a difference between the supply chain, which is the ability to actually produce the products, and then there's the ability to fulfill them. And so since back to school started and since the numbers have crept up, especially you live in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so not the best zone to be in
Yes,
any
no, it is not.
So, as those numbers have crept up, it become more people are then saying, "I don't wanna go into a supermarket right now," and so they've gotta work with, um, their fulfillment arm. I mean, there's a book that just came out that I actually ordered on Prime Day called The Secret Life of Groceries, and it's all about kind of the back office of the supermarket, and until I joined the Campbell board, I didn't really appreciate the totality of what goes into that how a bill becomes a law of product, but it's really incredible. So when you start seeing major search for things that weren't necessarily experiencing those major searches before, you're just dealing with different set of challenges. It could be ingredient sourcing, it could be getting truck drivers, it could be a whole bunch of things.
Yeah, not things that average consumer probably was thinking about
No,
pre-pandemic,
they're
certainly.
just saying, "Why can't I get my freaking soup?"
Yeah. So you actually joined Profitero right in the midst of the pandemic. Can you talk a little bit about what that's been like and what it's been like taking on this role, remotely?
Well, never thought like I thought I was making a bet on on an industry that was about to hit a meteoric rise, and I didn't expect it to happen like my first month on the job. So similar to getting into search and social, um, I try to get into industries as I start seeing shifts in consumer behavior. This e-commerce thing was a whole other story. So talk about getting, thrust into something real quick when everybody is, a little bit off. And in the meantime, for our employees, they're like, who are these new people?
Yeah.
Um, especially myself and Brian being New Yorkers, the company in the US headquarters are in Boston. So we weren't able to, visit post March. It's been, but we're all sitting here with the same amount of vulnerability. None of us can see each other. So it's super challenging, but you have to find ways to earn trust. And if that has to be over a video camera, then you just have to find different ways to make that work.
Any lessons that you've learned in sort of helping you make that work or what it's like leading, remotely?
I mean, I don't know what's working and what isn't. That's the truth. It's not like you get like this great feedback loop. I wish there were like ratings and reviews that not that I want to rate my professor for, rate my boss, um, but I think it's a lot of it starts with empathy. It's something that is most important. Everybody's going through a hard time. Everybody's going through a hard time probably for very, very different reasons. We have new moms, we have new dads, we have people caring for sick relatives, we have people caring for extended family, we have people that had to move, back to wherever their parents were. We've had people who've had spouses that have lost jobs. Everybody's going through something. And yet we sit there and we have clients that are going through major personal changes, obviously, but also major professional changes. Our clients are heads of e-commerce at big ass companies and they expect reliability from us. So balancing the needs of the clients, understandably so because of the position that they're in, but also being empathetic to our employees and what they're going through is a very tricky balance. And honestly, I don't know how well I'm doing on it, but I'm certainly trying my butt off.
Yeah. Well, when do you think we'll get to a point where, you'll start doing, client meetings or being able to, get to Boston, or is the office even, open over there? At what point are we in all of this?
I mean, I'm no Fauci. So, about a month ago, a few of us got together in Mystic, Connecticut outdoors, but that was when things were outdoors. So we were outdoors, socially distant, for a few hours, but the weather was in the 70s. So, meeting at a semi halfway mark to be able to have like a leadership offsite was great. Um, I don't know when we're going to be able to do something next, and I think we have to figure out how we work on Plan B and Plan C because that's what this world's been about. It's just been about what are we going to do with the tools we have. Like I said, it's like an episode of Chopped every day.
Yeah. Was it important to sort of do that face to face, like meeting in the middle and kind of having that moment to be able to be together? How important are those moments? Do you think that, as soon as things return to, the ability to do that, that we need those moments moving forward?
I can't speak for anybody but myself, and in this case, I would speak for my team. I thought it was super valuable. I missed it, and these are folks I barely spent any time with before COVID. So even more so because as much as you see people, first of all, you're seeing them. Not that I care to see people from the waist down. It's just like, "Oh, I forgot how tall you are." Like,
Yeah.
stupid things like that. But the not talking over each other part, the casual nature of it all, I missed it. I thought it was fabulous that we were able to do it. I can't wait to be able to do it again, but I ain't doing it unless it's safe. That's just the way it's gonna be.
Before I let you go, we have one question from social. What advice do you have for independent sellers and retailers that rely on Amazon for their business?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on what you're selling, but it's a great question. There are a couple of things. First off is margin, right? Every time you're using somebody else to distribute your product, you have to think about how much are you given to all the different steps along the way in doing so. So those who are relying on Amazon for their business, I think you just have to kind of keep in mind all of the different levers that you're going to need in order to be able to be successful there. So there are all the margin dollars on the distribution, but there's also margin dollars when you think about your SG&A. What's it going to cost you to actually, or actually no, your ad dollars. What's it gonna cost to get you to be discoverable? Just being able to put in a keyword is just simply not enough. So, making sure that your brand is discoverable, making sure your product description pages are relevant and informative, your product imagery's gotta, look right, and when I say look right, look you know, um, attractive and informative. Like you really have to make sure that people know what they're going to be getting when they get it. Make sure you've got appropriate ratings and reviews. Don't buy them. People know better than that. So just a couple of those plain things, and then depending on whether or not you think there's a viability to it, consider a D2C. Consider going through a Shopify as well, just to be able to cut down as much of that intermediary as possible. Brands and consumers have never had the opportunity to have such a strong relationship as they do right now, especially for independent brands.
Great. Well, thank you, Sarah, so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Janine.
As always, thank you to our Ad Age crew, Alfred Mascaroni, Elise Liffring, Anna Sakula, and Max Sternlick for making this live stream happen. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in.